Hey guys, welcome to the Silver Report Uncut. I wanted to talk about some shocking news. I didn't want to wait to get this out, but the Rus and China, they seem to be announcing a new global reserve currency, and no one seems to be noticing. This is huge news. This has to be the biggest news we've seen in a long time. So China and the Rus, they are attacking the dollar, and as typical in the US, no one even seems to notice or care. The military does, but the Rus and China, they're strengthening their economic ties despite the sanctions on the Rus over this whole conflict. RT reported in late June that the Rus and the BRICS countries are working on their own new global reserve currency. No one noticed. Also, their leader said at the BRICS Business Forum last month, "We're working on creating an international reserve currency based on our currencies." And as the Rus is cut off from the SWIFT system, it's working with China and the other BRICS nations to develop a reliable alternative mechanism for international payments, was his exact words. CNN reported that the Rus, they're rerouting trade to China and India to strengthen the BRICS alliance. Also, their president said once again that the Rus is rerouting trade to reliable international partners as the West tries to sever economic ties. He said in his virtual BRICS summit opening the video address, he said, "We are actively engaged in reorienting our trade flows and foreign economic contacts towards reliable international partners, primarily the BRICS countries." In fact, trade between the Rus and the BRICS countries, it increased by 38% this year, according to the report, and in the spring of this year, the Rus surpassed Saudi Arabia as China's primary oil supplier. Now, China is a major buyer of oil. They're almost up there with the U.S. Sometimes they flirt with overtaking the U.S. with their amount of oil consumption. But right now, it might not be the case due to the fact that everyone's locked in their homes. So he said, together with our BRICS partners, we are developing reliable alternative mechanisms for international settlements. You would find it interesting that China is currently buying more of their oil than ever before, but they said that he isn't loyal. He continued that their Rus and the BRICS business contacts, they've intensified. There are talks of open Indian chain stores in the Rus and to import more Chinese cars and equipment and hardware. He accused the West in June of ignoring the basic principles of the market economy, like free trade. He said it undermines business interests on a global scale, negatively affecting the well-being of people, in effect, of all countries. Bloomberg reported in June that Xi, he echoed his statements, politicizing, instrumentalizing, and weaponizing the world economy to impose sanctions will only hurt others and oneself, leaving people around the world suffering. Those who obsess over strength, expand their military alliance, and seek their own security at others' expense will fall into a security conundrum. It's shocking that nobody seems to notice about this, that the whole global macroeconomic playing field is shifting in a major way. This is like who controls the world. Now, the news may seem to be par on course in the context of this whole conflict, causing the media and the financial world to downplay it. Without context, a coordinated global challenge to the US dollar would be the biggest story in decades, if not ever. What if these two countries did this? Both countries have been preparing for this for years. Look at the Rus' treasury holdings from 2018. The Rus dumped treasuries and likely switched to swaps. The Rus also increased their gold holdings during this entire period. This headline appeared in 2020, months before any of this took place. So this headline appeared in 2020, months before any of this conflict took place. It was, quote, "any chance," unquote. Now the Nikkei wrote, since 2014, when the Rus and China expanded their economic cooperation, the de-dollarization has been a priority. To avoid the U.S. sanctions against this country, trade settlements had to replace the dollar. The BRICS nations seem to understand how precarious the U.S. and the dollar are financially. Despite the dollar's recent strength, these nations are de-dollarizing. China and the Rus, they were stockpiling gold and working on non-U.S. dollar transactions before this entire conflict. Another secret was exposed. Remember how insane this would have been considered 6 months ago? Well, everyone said it was difficult. Today, it's less. And since the BRICS conference, ties between the Rus and China have continued to tighten. Japan warned this week about the pair's strengthening of ties. Meanwhile, China has closely monitored House Speaker Nancy Pelot's trip to Taiwan. Japan recently said, as a result of the current aggression, their national power may decline and the military balance and cooperation with China may change. In Japan's vicinity, the Rus, they've strengthened cooperation with China through joint bomb flights and other sales, as well as moves to portray such a cooperation as strategic coordination. Japan said the two countries' alignment must be closely watched. Also, China is becoming more cagey about Taiwan as their economy turns. CNN reported that China has sent warplanes into Taiwan's self-declared defense zone, identification zone, and recently alluded to a no-fly zone over Taiwan ahead of Nancy Peloton's visit. President Brandon said this week that Peloton's travel plans aren't a good idea, but I don't know. Peloton will probably leave. I thank you guys for stopping by and joining us. As always, stay free.